Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. I had originally thought to ignore the subject of this morning's briefing. I thought I would just make a Twitter post about Ron DeSantis jumping out of the race with the word "told ya," just to show my utter contempt for this pustule, but when I'm dancing on someone's political grave, I might as well make a whole concert out of it. I was going to make this morning's briefing about Don Lemonade jumping into bed with Elon Musk, but I might as well go ahead and put the screws to Ron DeSantis' now dead political campaign. I'm gratified to see this brain-dead scumbag throw in the towel, but I can't really get too excited about it because I've been saying this is going to happen for years, telling you all from the very start that this clown was never in any danger of becoming the nominee, much less president. His rise and fall has all been thoroughly predictable. This is the political epitaph for moron DeSantis. I mean, the only way he doesn't wind up like Rick Snyder and those other GOP has-beens is if Donald Trump gets a brain tumor and decides to make him VP out of nowhere. I simply can't see that happening. Donald Trump hates ambitious people because they inevitably become disloyal and disobedient. He prefers people who are dumb and cooperative. Hell, when you can't even count on an empty suit like Mike Pence not to turn on you, that's how you know you suck at choosing yes men. I would love to say that DeSantis politically imploded, but he never took off to begin with. His campaign was a checklist of everything not to do. Moron DeSantis committed political suicide several times over. The only thing bigger than his ego was his stupidity. He barely managed to squeak by Andrew Big Bussy Gillum in a political race that he should have won handily. And that was the first sign to me that this clown was in over his head. When he had been in Congress, he did absolutely nothing of note. He was trying to be a little attention whore even back then, say when he objected to hurricane funding for New York. He was obnoxious and easily ignored, and he knew it, so his strategy was to scream louder. And he did. He already put his racist bona fides on display before he barely beat Gillum, and afterwards he went whole hog for the white racist right. DeSantis had already been desperately hoping for a chance to run for president, and when Trump lost in 2020, DeSantis was drooling as he thought he saw his opportunity, and he felt he had the perfect way to carve out a political niche for himself that would appeal to both the Trumpists without alienating the donors who he wanted the money of. So, proving he doesn't have the sense God gave a dog, DeSantis brought in Christopher Rufo to be his advisor, and he also brought in some other Manhattan Institute flunkies. Rufo is a two-bit grifter. He tried to be a far-right filmmaker like Dinesh D'Souza, but he failed at that, so becoming an advisor to desperate presidential wannabes was his plan B. Rufo helped talk DeSantis into thinking that becoming a culture warrior was the way to go, and by culture warrior that meant waging war on black people. And so DeSantis made it his mark that he would be ridiculously racist and so blatantly anti-black that even David Duke would be embarrassed. He ran against black history, against the presence of black people in society, and against black people's right to live. DeSantis passed laws to legalize hitting black protesters with your car, banned books featuring black people, the whole nine. He made it clear that war on woke was obviously a euphemism for war on black people. And now he has become a casualty of the war he started. If it was a war on woke, he lost it. Now, a lot of Negroes who listen to the white media were scared of DeSantis, and while he could be dangerous if he became president, I already knew this was never going to happen. He clearly wasn't very smart. He's a Republican in a blood-red state. The fact that he didn't crush Andrew Gillum to dust, that told me everything I needed to know about what a fool he is. He was never going to make it out of Florida. And so he began with the non-stop race-baiting, attacking books featuring black people, doing stupid stunts like putting Christopher Rufo on the administrative board of the new school. This right-wing trolling didn't represent actual political gains. It only represented a hyper-gerrymandered state legislature who unconstitutionally gave the governor the ability to take over schools and universities. None of these changes will last because they don't reflect reality. But the white right have been getting their teeth kicked in for the last 3 generations, so they were desperate for some show of force on their behalf. Hell, even Rufo, dumb as he is, wrote a book talking about how the left took over everything. So for all Rufo's beating his chest about how successful his war on critical race theory was going, I was the one who pointed out to you that the asinine message legislation DeSantis signed all got struck down by the courts. Sure, the Florida GOP legislature could act as a rubber stamp for any stupid idea Rufo came up with, but they all failed. And then came the inevitable political backlash. A number of the school boards that they thought they took over have now been taken back by the very leftists who are determined to give these Rufo wannabes a taste of their own medicine. Go back into the archives of this channel, I encourage you to. Go rewatch the videos that I've done about DeSantis for the last couple of years, and I told you back when this crap was happening that it was damned to failure, and I told you why. Because once you go to the extreme like he did, you've left yourself nowhere else to go. Running to the hard right or the hard left is difficult to do during a primary because inevitably you're going to have to pivot back to the center so you can pick up all of those moderate votes, because you can't win the presidency without them. But if you decide you're going to run to the extreme right, you can go ahead and give it up from day one, especially if you're a talentless, no charisma having klutz like Ron DeSantis. But not only did DeSantis make more sizzle than steak about his would-be war on woke, he also left his fellow Republicans in other states with nowhere to go either. Rufo was busy on the internet trying to enhance his own profile by spouting gibberish about how the political stunts he pulled in Florida was going to be a nationwide blueprint. That's the kind of crap I would expect from somebody who works for a think tank, because that's what the think tanks like to say to themselves, that they're going to change the nation. All Rufo really managed to do was just antagonize people to the polls to vote against his candidates. See, any fool can ram far-right legislation through a blood-red legislature, but can you get it through a purple legislature, or better yet, through a blue state legislature? Love them or hate them, the white left showed what a true national blueprint is. With their abortion state referendums and then challenging Trump with the 14th Amendment everywhere they could, Republicans tried to change the state law in Ohio to make statewide referendums impossible. But even that effort failed. So they lost an election on abortion and a law to try to limit the voters' power. The Republicans were beaten twice in their own state, a state that they were supposed to have on lock. The Democrats showed what a real nationwide blueprint is because it works in places where their political opponents were in control and the GOP couldn't stop it. See, if your nationwide blueprint only works in GOP-controlled legislatures, or worse, only works in places with blood-red far-right legislatures in a political basket case like Florida, then you'll only get a few states to go along with you at best, and that's as far as it's going to go. That's not a nationwide anything, much less a nationwide blueprint. DeSantis' entire political strategy was to do some racist stunt and then immediately get on Tucker Carlson's show to promote himself. Rinse, repeat. And while DeSantis did get plenty of face time on Fox News, the problem was he wasn't gaining any support. DeSantis thought that his biggest problem was gaining name recognition. So he did all this stupid stuff because he's racist and because he thought being an over-the-top anti-black bigot would help his name to spread like wildfire. He thought that if he could just get the media to talk about him, that's all he needed. In his book, any publicity was good publicity. That's a very shallow mindset, but that's what he had, and it's what I expect from a brainless frat rat, which is what he was at Yale. Name recognition is important, but that's only the beginning of running a successful campaign. At some point, all the airtime you get on TV has to start translating into political support. That means you have to be able to connect with the voters. When people thought of DeSantis, though, all they thought of was a loudmouth blowhard who hates black people, bans books, and doesn't like Mickey Mouse. The things DeSantis stood against wouldn't motivate anyone to the polls, and he never made the effort to tell anybody what he actually stood for. That's because DeSantis has no core principles. He just has empty talking points given to him by clowns like Christopher Rufo. Owning the libs is good for an internet comment section, but you can't make public policy based on that. And now DeSantis has proven to himself you can't even run a political campaign based on owning the libs either. So DeSantis' political strategy was to try to palm himself off as being Trump's successor. He praised Trump. He did stupid campaign ads showing himself reading books to children about Trump. It was as pathetic as it was cringe-inducing. And then the unthinkable happened. The Orange Man announced that he was running again so he could keep himself out of prison. So he could finish the job of making America great. And DeSantis was thrown into a tailspin. And as for his war on woke, nobody outside of the white right on the internet even knew what woke is or even cares. And people like Bethany Mandel couldn't define it either. And that brings me to what was the real fatal flaw in DeSantis' entire campaign. You see, DeSantis and Rufo clearly spent a lot of time on the internet, and I mean a lot. When you hear the kind of things that they say, when you see how tone deaf they are to the fact that their talking points weren't getting them any new supporters, you realize that the only audience they were trying to appeal to was racist whites on the internet. That was DeSantis' constituency. Those clowns on the internet are rabid about attacking anything woke and about eliminating black people from society, but if you spend all your time on the internet, you're in a silo. The algorithms of sites like Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, they're all geared toward giving you more of the content you're already interested in. So, if you're a racist rube governor of a backwater state and you're seeking out content that attacks black people because that's what you want to see, you'll find it. But DeSantis' problem is that he and Rufo would watch dozens of far-right propaganda videos and Twitter feeds, and they both thought that because each video had tens of thousands of views individually, that this meant that there were collectively millions of people who supported the kind of open racism that they like, when in reality, what they were seeing was just the same racists watching all those videos over and over again. DeSantis wasn't talking to millions of people, he was just talking to the same handful of right-wing nuts on Twitter and YouTube who go from one video to the next. They were enthused about his racist jihad, but nobody else was. Rufo's anti-critical race theory hysteria was only a thing in 4 states, and it only actually was popular in 1, Florida. Rufo never would understand that his little plan could never be a nationwide strategy, but Rufo needed people to think it could be, because that's the only thing he's ever done in his entire life that didn't fail. The problem for him, though, is he doesn't have a follow-up. That's why you see the white right constantly trying to invent another 3-letter acronym they can attack so they can relive the so-called success of their anti-CRT crusade. This is why we've seen weird phrases like DEI and ESG, etc. They're running the same playbook all over again, refusing to see their little strategy played out a long time ago. They have no real ideas, so they just do the same thing, only more of it. When DeSantis went on Twitter and humiliated himself with his failed Twitter campaign launch, that showed where his mind was. He figured that he could collect and concentrate all those internet racists on Twitter because the white supremacist Elon Musk owned it and he thought it was ground zero for his kind of voter. But instead of being a triumphant campaign launch, it became a colossal humiliation. Neither DeSantis nor Musk is ready for prime time. And the worst part is that in comparative terms, that disastrous Twitter launch was actually one of the last good things to happen to DeSantis. He only had one phony poll that ever pretended like he was actually beating Trump. And that phony poll was put out by a right-wing lobbying group. They were hoping that by putting out a poll saying that DeSantis was just beating Trump by 15-20 points, they thought and hoped that that would begin a domino effect, where there would be all these people going, well, surely it must be true because we want it to be. Except reality always has the last word. After that one phony poll, all the other polls about DeSantis showed him way behind Trump. DeSantis' nonstop Fox News appearances backfired on him. Sure, a lot of people knew who he was, and they didn't like him. And the more people saw of DeSantis, the less they liked him. And these were Republicans, mind you. And then came the 2 nails in his future political ambitions to be anything other than a dishwasher at RNC headquarters after he leaves office. First, DeSantis enthusiastically pushed a racist revisionist school curriculum teaching that slavery was beneficial, and he boldly defended it, even after being told that it was all a lie. And then came one of DeSantis' supporters who carried out a mass murder of black Floridians. DeSantis came to town and was roundly booed when he tried to claim he had nothing to do with it, because everyone recognized he was solely responsible for that atrocity, though your black bootlick pundits in the white media never seemed able to make that connection. DeSantis has destroyed his own image and was too stupid to even know it. He surrounded himself with nothing but yes men and then siloed himself off on the internet where he got a nonstop diet of bias confirmation. Even Republican primary voters could see that all he was doing was campaigning against black people, and that was stupid because black people weren't on the ballot. Red state racists already know that black people are no political threat to them in their own states, and they also know that anti-woke crap that Rufo pushes will never become national law. All it's good for is giving the racists in Florida a quick little sugar rush, but it goes no further than that. This will be DeSantis' political epitaph. He made himself obnoxious to non-Republicans, and he made himself irrelevant to Republicans. He could never tell anyone what he was for because he wasn't actually for anything. See, this is why it's important that a politician be able to tell people what they're going to get from them. That's why it's not enough to only say what you're against. At some point, you have to tell voters what they're going to get from you. So, where does DeSantis go from here? Nowhere. Donald Trump doesn't want him. He can't run for re-election as governor again, and he can't run for the Senate either because those seats in Florida are already taken. He has no prayer of becoming RNC chairman because especially after how he crashed and burned in this presidential campaign, nobody's going to want him around. He's just a reminder of an embarrassment. If DeSantis wasn't so stupid, he would have served out his second term as governor and then run for the presidency in 2028. Because no matter who Trump picks to be his running mate this year, they're not going to be any smarter than Mike Pence. So Trump's VP would wind up just like Pence did, struggling for relevance, trying to convince people they deserve to be in office, and failing. Politics is warfare, and in war, timing is everything. But having a personality and ideas is important too. What a shame DeSantis had none of these things. His political action committee called itself Never Back Down, but he's been in full retreat from the jump. Ron DeSantis ends exactly the way that I told you all that he would years back. I told you forget about DeSantis making it past the primaries. He wouldn't even make it past Super Tuesday. Hell, he didn't even make it that far. You know, that's part of the black media's job. You need news and analysis from people who are able to tell you what the headlines are going to be before they get here. DeSantis made a lot of noise, but if noise doesn't become coherent, people will simply cover their ears and tune it out, which is exactly what happened to him. So I guess in the end, Christopher Rufo was right after all. He and DeSantis did indeed establish a nationwide blueprint for how to lose elections. Good day. And be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Terrence Gaines, Odell, Kareem Lawless, Tavon Boone, and Morris Bodden. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.